Yeah, we're here with Darin Hayes. Darin has written a book, World's Greatest Pro Gridiron Team, the 1903 Franklin All-Stars. Darin, thanks a bunch for being on here on the YDL Sports Network.
Chris, it's quite an honor to be on your show, so thank you for having me.
Uh, this book that you've written, it's really pretty cool. It's about a professional football team, and of all places, Franklin, Pennsylvania. And bet there's a lot of people in our audience that didn't even realize that there ever was such a thing.
Well, 5 years ago, I didn't realize there was such a thing, and I've been involved in football in this area, most of my life, and including officiating PIAA and being a historian of pro football. And I came across it in some old manuscripts in the Professional Football Research Association, and saw Franklin, Pennsylvania, and Oil City, Pennsylvania. I said, "Hey, I know where those places are," because I'm from Erie, and the rest is history. And I said, "This has got to be written about to be preserved."
So this 1903 team, and part of the reason that you call it the world's greatest pro gridiron team, never gave up a point the whole season. And in fact, if memory serves me right, nobody even crossed midfield on them until the championship game, which was played in the original Madison Square Gardens in New York. A lot of people don't realize there's been three different iterations of Madison Square Gardens, and at least the current one is not in the same location, but in some context involved there. This is before the forward pass was an actual legal play, so everything had to be on the ground. But still, wow, what an accomplishment!
Yeah, it's amazing what they did. It's 3 years before the forward pass was legalized, when Teddy Roosevelt got involved with the football rules committee of the NCAA, what became the NCAA eventually. They were just the football rules committee for college football, and adopted the forward pass, which really wasn't recognizable until 1912. So almost a decade before that. This team in 1903 running the ball, mostly what we would call the A gap, they called line bucks, and a few sweeps here and there, would do some crazy formations with tackles and guards in the backfield, and sometimes they would even run the ball because you didn't have to have 7 men on the line at that time. And they scored almost a point per minute, which is more than any other team in the history of football that I could find. And touchdowns at that time were only worth 5 points and not 6. If they were worth 6 points, they scored over a point per minute.
Just amazing. And how did you stumble across this?
Well, like I said, I was reading some old documents from a magazine called The Coffin Corner in the PFRA, the Professional Football Researchers Association, which I'm a member of. And it's a group of football historians that are sort of started in the late 1970s in Canton, Ohio at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. They sort of sponsored it and got it going. Joe Horrigan, who was a longtime executor of the Football Hall of Fame, sort of got us started, and he still helps us out now and then. But just wanted to preserve football history by amateur writers and some professional writers. And I joined it probably about 5 or 6 years ago, and I saw this in these old magazines called The Coffin Corner. And it's started talking about this great team from Franklin and their rivalry with Oil City, and that's what really caught my eye when I saw Western Pennsylvania. Living here all my life, I really caught on to that, and that's really got me into the story.
Yeah, I do want to mention that you're going to be part of a great night in Franklin, PA on October the 2nd from 7 to 10 p.m. Pro Football's Night of Legends. I hear a rumor that they might have an interview with the authors of the Dick LeBeau's legendary book Legendary, and Dick LeBeau Legendary is the actual name of the book. Scott Brown and George Von Bentko. John Kolb might be there, but what an opportunity. And folks, if you're interested, go to the Venango County website. You can actually, there's links off of our website for that as well. It is a little bit of a cost, $75 per person, $125 per couple. But man, that includes dinner and the books, and it's an autographed copy of the book. And there's another book there as well that's going to have an autographed copies of it. So really a great opportunity for people to sit down and learn a little bit about football, pro football history.
Yeah, the panel is excellent that they're going to have there. I feel really honored to be sitting there with some of these gentlemen that you mentioned, and there's even a couple more too. Some Pittsburgh sports guys that are on TV and radio down there too, so it should be fun. But but they're going to have John Last from WICU Erie News Now is going to be the MC of it, and there's going to be some memorabilia given away too, from what I understand. So
Yeah,
really,
it's going to
really
be
bargain.
it's going to be a great night. Obviously, again, that's October the 2nd from 7 to 10 p.m. at the Elks Club in Franklin. And again, just get on our website. The links are all there, folks, to buy the online tickets if you're interested. But you're involved because you decided to write a book. And had you ever written a book before?
No, this is my first book. I have a website and I've blogged a lot. And, at first I was kind of naive. I said, well, I'll just put a bunch of blog posts together and you have a book. How hard can that be? Well, it's a lot more than that once you get into, citing people and making sure you're accurate and you're factual. But a lot of fun and well worth it. And the event on October 2nd, the proceeds are going to go to part of them to the Venango Historical Society, and they were a big part of helping me and do my research. And if anybody has not visited there in Franklin, it is really worthwhile. It's really a cool place to go and visit, and it's an old mansion of some sort. I forget who owned it, but it's right next to General Charles Miller's offices of the Signal Oil Company, and General Charles Miller is sort of a quasi-central figure in the Franklin book that I wrote.
Yeah, I don't think people realize that, like, Venango County, Franklin area, Oil City, all of that in the early 1900s was one of the more bustling places in this entire country, which is sort of how all this gets started. And it actually starts with a rivalry between Oil City and Franklin, doesn't it?
Yeah, it starts with the baseball rivalry, and that was another book I got. The Franklin Herald, I believe it was called at the time, had a paper come out right around World War I, where they sort of reviewed the final decades of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, the baseball rivalry. And then at the end, they slipped in this little thing about the football rivalry that Oil City and Franklin had. So that's some of the basis where I got some information from my book, a lot from the Franklin Herald newspaper from the day, going on newspapers.com. So a lot of stuff there. But yeah, that rivalry, these guys were, probably what we would consider billionaires, especially men like General Charles Miller, who, from what I understand, he got involved in the oil industry early on, but also owned a good part of the tracks between New York City and Pittsburgh. New York City needed to steal from Pittsburgh to build the big skyscrapers that we see today, and Carnegie and all that stuff. So he owned the tracks and the rights to the tracks.
By the tracks you mean the railroad tracks?
Yeah, the railroad tracks. That's how they transported the steel.
Yeah, wow. I mean, just all pure profit, basically, I'd bet.
Yeah, most definitely.
But kind of starts the 1903 Franklin team sort of is born out of that rivalry between Oil City and Franklin in 1902, isn't it?
Yes, the rivalry sort of heated up in football. They were amateurs from, I assume, local boys, it sounds like, for the most part, playing each other just for, they're so close, 9 miles apart, I believe. And just the rivalry, because they were both burgeoning at the same time because of the same thing, the oil money. So they played, and every once in a while they'd slip a ringer in here and there just to get an advantage. But where there's money, there's gambling, there's sports. You think we gamble now? Well, they gambled back 120 years ago as well. In 1902, there was a game there was 3 games scheduled between Oil City and Franklin. The first 2 were pretty close games, ties, in fact. They were the second one being played on Thanksgiving Day. They said, we got to have a sort of a rubber match here. They planned it for the Saturday after Thanksgiving. But in between there was a championship game of professional football being played in Pittsburgh of the original National Football League, which only lasted in 1902. It was a 3-team league, baseball-oriented. The Philadelphia Phillies, Philadelphia Athletics, and the Pittsburgh team was called the Stars. Well, the Athletics and the Stars had the championship game. Pittsburgh won the first National Football League championship in 1902.
Hey, did you hear all that, Cleveland fans?
yeah. It was all Pennsylvania. The NFL was all Pennsylvania then. But Oil City went down and hired the entire athletics team to play that third game on the Saturday after. So Franklin goes there expecting to see the same guys they played 2 days earlier, and it's a whole different band of fellas there. And they won. Oil City won, and the Oil City fans and bettors won some money. Franklin people, a little bit upset.
I bet. And so that kind of led to the Franklin people deciding they were going to go all pro, doesn't it?
Well, it did. General Charles Miller was probably the one that was miffed the most, and had the most backing and probably the most losses. And he and Joseph Sibley, his brother-in-law and business partner, they hired a young man that was acting as manager of that Franklin team at the time, a young clothier called Dave Prince, who had a shop with his brothers in downtown Franklin at the time. He said, go out and hire the best team money can buy to beat Oil City next year, which would be the 1903 season. So Dave Prince did just, in fact, that, and hired what would be the equivalent today of going out and hiring the NFL All-Pro team.
Probably for a little cheaper than it was, but it would be now, though.
Probably, yeah, I'm sure it was. Yeah,
and so not only do they end up, winning the area title, and people should know, and a lot of people I don't think understand this, that Oil City and Franklin were connected by trolley lines back then, and so it in some ways they were next door neighbors, in some ways they were far apart, but they were very well connected. You could get between the two places. Obviously that rivalry continues today at the high school level, that started way back there at the turn of the century. But not to digress, in 1903, the Franklin team ends up going to New York City, and that had to be kind of could you just imagine being from Franklin, PA, and you're playing for like some sort of world championship? Your team is playing for some world championship in Madison Square Gardens.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting with it. They called it the World Series of Football, is what we call it today. There was two of them. 1902, they had some of those players from that original NFL played in Madison Square Garden, put it on that year. They lost their butts on it. They're trying to put together something for the holidays that would attract people in, because people are going to New York City. Well, they lost a lot of money on that. So the 1903 was actually sponsored by a team that thought they were better than Franklin, and they didn't really want to meet Franklin because Franklin, all their games were at home because Franklin would pay the bill for the visitors to come. Nobody wanted to pay for Franklin to come and clean their clocks. So Watertown, and the team still exists today as a semi-pro team, the Watertown Red and Black in Watertown, New York. Well, they ended up having this clever idea where their owner rented out Madison Square Garden and said, okay, we're going to have a second World Series of football, and invited 4 teams in, Franklin being one of the teams, Watertown, a couple from New Jersey, and there was a tournament. So Watertown won their game, Franklin won their game. They met in a championship game. So it was sort of the epic thing that everybody was waiting for all year. These two best teams in football finally got to meet each other on the field.
So, obviously there were only 2 of these World Series of footballs. How long did the Franklin pro team last? Was it like a one and done thing? Was it a number of years before it sort of faded away?
Well, at the end of the 1903 season, of course, they beat Watertown in that, but we said earlier, unscored upon. Nobody crossed the 50-yard line but twice, and one of those was in the championship game. And they were both on fumbles, by the way, where Franklin fumbled the ball, somebody recovered, and the next play, either Franklin got the ball back or was retreated the other team behind midfield. They were satisfied with what they did. The team that they built to play Oil City never played them in 1903 because they didn't want to face them with the team that they put together. They knew they couldn't match them. So they got out of the bet somehow.
Start of the rivalry.
Right. So Franklin.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
But Franklin people got together and they said, we don't have anything more to accomplish. We won every game. We crushed everybody we played. Nobody could score us. We scored all kinds of points. Why does it matter? So they disbanded the team after 1903. And what that did is it disbanded professional football in Pennsylvania for the most part, because professional football started in Pittsburgh in 1892. And up till 1903, it was really the only place where it was being played and be at a high level. That's why the NFL was only in, the original NFL was only in Pennsylvania. After 1903, all those teams, players from Franklin and many from Pittsburgh, migrated across the Ohio line, played for Canton, Massillon, Shelby, Akron, which you see ended up being the mythical Ohio League, which eventually formed into the NFL we know today.
Yeah, and then it took another 30 years before pro football really returned to Pittsburgh in the form of, at the time, what was known as the Pirates. A lot of people don't realize the Steelers were originally named the Pirates, and then I think it wasn't until about 1940 that they got named the Steelers. But and then, as they say, the rest is history. Really, in a lot of ways, Canton gets the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Pittsburgh gets arguably one of the greatest franchises in NFL history. And all those roots can be traced back to a lot of this original stuff that was going on, and Franklin played a small role in that, and that's actually really pretty cool when you think about it.
It definitely is. And that's why one of the reasons I wrote the book, because I think they were that important to football history. Their story needs to be told. And it's probably a lesson to us. We all complain about maybe some of the rules of the NFL having parity and how the draft is set up and things like that. And, the worst team gets to pick first. Well, a lot of that is probably from the lessons we learned from a team like Franklin, because the only people who were happy about Franklin were the people in Franklin. Nobody else probably was really real keen on having a team that strong.
So, Darin, how can people pick up a copy of your book?
Well, it's available on Amazon. It's you can look under my name, Darin Hayes, or go to the world's greatest professional football or pro gridiron team, the 1903 Franklin team, and you'll find it right on Amazon.
And folks, Darin spelled Darin, just if you're looking it up, and it's Hayes, Hayes. But again, you can just go to Amazon, pick that up, have an opportunity to read a little bit about not only local history, but professional football history. And don't forget, folks, if you want to hear Darin and a bunch of other great stories about the history of pro football and just stories about pro football, make sure you get your tickets to the Pro Football's Night of Legends. Comes with dinner, signed books, the whole 9 yards. Again, October the 2nd from 7 to 10 p.m. at the Elks Club in Franklin. As long as they don't sell out, I understand they're going to sell tickets at the door as well. And I know some Pittsburgh sports personalities like Joe Starkey, Paul Alexander, Paul Zeiss may be there as well. So and the great thing is, as you mentioned, all the proceeds will go to support the Franklin Historical Society and the Venango Museum of Art, Science, and Industry. So, Darin, I don't want to keep you any longer today. I know you got some work you got to get done, but special thanks for joining us here on the YDL Sports Network today.
Thanks, Chris. I really appreciate it.